While making this series, there's one thing that stuck out to me recently. I always thought that stuff like the Panther, Tiger, and Sherman would be the most popular by far. Those are the ones people always argue about anyway. But it seems like German tank destroyers are pretty popular too. With that in mind, it makes sense to talk about the supposed king of German TDs, the infamous Jagdtiger. Its story is surprisingly similar to the Ferdinand, the TD we talked about last month. On the surface, the Jagdtiger is incredibly formidable. Not only was it the largest and most well-armored tank of the Second World War, but it also had the most powerful gun. Of course, that's only on the surface. I don't want to spoil too much, so I'll just say this. Compared to the Ferdinand, the Jagdtiger was in an even worse position. But before we get into it, I want to talk about my sponsor. I'm partnered with Apex Gaming. They make pre-built PCs. If you're looking to upgrade, you should check them out. Link is in the description and comments. You can use my username as a discount code on checkout. Now back to the video. Being a late war vehicle, it's probably no surprise that the Jagdtiger started development in 1943. Its development was spurred by the success of the Sturmgeschütz, casemate self-propelled guns that provided direct fire support, whether that was against emplacements or tanks. The Sturmgeschütz was successful because it was cheap, easy to make, powerful, based on a chassis already in service, and reliable. In order to keep that role filled, it was decided to make a new sort of heavy Sturmgeschütz. Using a powerful gun and thick armor, it would assault the enemy directly. While the Ferdinand was created for this role, there was no way it could totally fill it. Since it was based on the Porsche Tiger, its production run was limited. It also had a long 88, which was deemed inadequate. In order to future-proof the new vehicle, a 128mm gun was specified. Concepts based on both the Panther and Tiger II chassis were developed, but it was found that the Panther chassis wasn't viable. In October of 1943, the mock-up for the Tiger II base model was completed, and in April of the next year, the pilot vehicles were finished. Except for the suspension, the two vehicles were identical. Henschel's design had 9 overlapping road wheels, while Porsche's used 8. Henschel's suspension was chosen. In spite of this, Porsche still tried to improve his design, with little success. His new design was unique. It had bogies with external torsion bars. The thinking was that it would simplify production. With only 2 examples made, the war ended before that theory could be tested. Now christened the Jagdtiger, it had a fixed superstructure placed in the middle of the hull. The face of the superstructure was 25 centimeters thick, angled at 15 degrees. This essentially made it firmly impervious to anything fielded at that time. It also raised the combat weight to a whopping 75 metric tons. The hull was extended to increase track contact length, thereby decreasing ground pressure, but the success of this measure was limited. Instead of the Tiger II's 5 crew, the Jagdtiger had 6. Since the ammunition was so cumbersome, the extra man acted as an assistant loader. 40 rounds were carried in total, which is honestly pretty impressive. The gun had a typical pig's head mantlet, which was common for late war vehicles. It was a very efficient design, and it offered great protection. The drivetrain, as you can imagine, was identical to the Tiger II. It had an HL230 gasoline engine. This was connected to an 8-speed transmission. Unlike the Panther, it had double helical final drives. I know that seems like an odd detail, but it is worth noting. The Panther had spur-cut final drives, which was a serious design flaw. So while the Tiger II was a bit of a mess, it did make some improvements compared to previous designs. As you can imagine though, adding more weight to an already stressed vehicle is never going to end well. On the Jagdtiger, the engine was simply not up to the task. At 600 horsepower, it provided just 8 horsepower per ton. This limited both speed and maneuverability. The Jagdtiger's maximum theoretical speed was just 34 kilometers per hour. Emphasis on theoretical. It averaged 20 on road, and just 10 kilometers per hour off of it. There's also that whole thing where, the engine liked to set itself on fire, but I think I've harped on that issue enough. The transmission wasn't exactly the poster child for reliability either. Among the reasons the Jagdtiger failed though, unreliability is just one. Production was not running smoothly at all, mostly owing to a shortage of cannons. With around 80 Jagdtigers built, it was even less produced than the Ferdinand. In late 1944, the Jagdtiger first saw combat, and was used until the last days of the war. But unlike the Ferdinand, which enjoyed some success at Kursk, the Jagdtiger did basically nothing. That isn't hyperbole. Many broke down or ran out of fuel before being abandoned, never seeing combat in the first place. Some had incredibly inexperienced crews, allowing Allied tanks to disable them easily. Whatever the case, the Jagdtiger killed very few tanks, probably less than its own production run. In different circumstances, the Jagdtiger may have been very effective. But just like the M6 Heavy, it really had nothing going for it. It didn't do anything that other German tanks couldn't do. Maybe it could have gone toe-to-toe with the IS-3, but the IS-3 was a hollow threat. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on the next one.